Welcome to the Thrill of Driving podcast. Now, continuing from our last week's podcast where we talked to Pratap Bose on car design, this week we have another special guest and he's going to talk to us about bike design. We have with us Chetaan Shedjale. He's the senior designer at Harley-Davidson and he's the guy who was responsible for the Street 750, the Street Rod, and also the recent Bronx. He's had a long career in bike designing. Studied in India, went and interned in Italy, worked in Italy with one of the gods of design, went to the States, is still working at Harley-Davidson, also has a lot of strong opinions on a whole variety of design subjects, also works on furniture. I just heard about that. So he's got a wide variety of views, and I think we'll have a good conversation this week with you, Chetan. Thank you for being on the Thrill of Driving podcast. What brings you to India?
Well, I'm on vacation, and thanks for inviting me for this podcast because it's fun to talk on overall variations of different types of designs.
So, you are an Indian,
Yes.
but you are based in America and
Yeah.
you are part of Harley Davidson's core design team. That's right.
Sure.
Yeah. But you studied here.
Yeah, I did my bachelor's here in architecture,
Okay.
and then I moved to Italy in year 2003 for my master's in car and transportation design. That was in Milan.
So, isn't there a disconnect between architecture and car design, or did you switch lines once you had finished with your architecture?
Well, architecture forms the base for your aesthetical senses or something like that. Let's put
Okay.
it in that way. But then it goes from, you move steps slowly. But of course, what I'm doing today is nothing related to architecture. And car design was similar. Initial period in Italy was a little bit difficult because all the kids who were in the class, they were already coming from either industrial design background or product design background.
So before we get to Italy, you did architecture here in India.
Yes.
Then what made you decide to switch to car design, and what made you decide to go to Italy of all places? Now, a lot of us go and study in the States,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Or maybe Germany.
Yep.
If you don't get into the States or if you get a scholarship, whatever. Why Italy? And was the language an issue?
Well, the question is quite wide enough. So I did my architecture here, but then before even I complete my architecture, I had an idea of what I wanted to do. And that goes back to why I did my entrance exam for NID.
Okay.
And in NID, I was in the top 10 in India. And that's where I felt like, no, I think I'm made for something better.
Okay.
And that's where me and my dad started discussing what can be the best, because I was fascinated with cars. And Indian history of design for me in car industry was from Dilip Chhabria. I call him sir because
Yeah, fair
I-
enough.
I-
Because he's the one, with all his that outlandish Sierra and all
Yeah,
that. That's
yeah,
when you
yeah.
saw that you could do this to
Yeah,
a car,
yeah.
right? And he was the first Indian designer.
Yeah, yeah.
Others before that we had not heard of Indian automotive
I
designers.
remember very well in my first or second year of architecture itself, his studio was a small studio in Tardeo.
Yes, in Bombay.
In Bombay. I used to go and stand outside. And that was my admiration to someone who was doing something different. Not a body kit. I'm not talking of a body kit. He was giving some distinctive language to the car. Even if you had an 800, he would make it look like something else. And that was fascinating. Cars, motorcycles, overall, it was that way. And then, because I was into being a gearhead, architecture was a base just to get into the flow. And in India, you don't have a transportation design school as such. If you go back in 1996 to 2000 till 2000, I think NID started becoming one of the predominant product design,
Yes.
not transportation.
Yes, yeah, even Pratap said that because Pratap also he studied product design.
Yeah. And then he moved to Italy.
Yes.
Pratap's history. But I have heard about his story. So that same thing, and my dad and me, we discussed about it, and we thought Italy is the hub for automotive or in general design. And in Marathi we say Maher Ghar. Means it's like just as soon as you enter there, even a normal person is dressed so well that you can't make out what's his status or something.
Yes.
And that was through magazines. Through magazines like you used to write. I think you were...
At Overdrive that time?
Overdrive.
Yes.
So my dad used to buy those magazines. And I used to read through car magazines or fashion magazines, which my dad used to buy. And that was how I grew up in Solapur. And I got to know, like, okay, so we made a point, like, let's go towards Italy versus USA or UK or Germany. And it could have been easy to go there and merge into that whole group and move on.
Yeah.
But I think I took up the challenge because my dad said, no, this might be something game-changing for your life, maybe. Because you are so fascinated about these things. And these things are made, like Fiat being a big industry. And you and I have grown up with Padmini.
Yes.
Or 118 NE.
Yeah, yes.
All those cars.
Which was the Fiat 124. Yeah.
So that was something which my dad would talk. Or he is not a designer or something, but he was an enthusiast who knew quite a bit about the world. So he feeded that information, and that made me to go like, okay, let's go to Italy. And coming to your question on language, it was difficult for first 3 to 4 months, but our vowels, like the pronunciations which we do in Hindi or Marathi, are more or less similar to Italian.
Okay.
So that was a big boom, like, it gave me quick access to that language.
Was your studies in Italian or in
Yes.
English?
So the master's course was in Italian. So I had to write the question paper would be in Italian. We would go and take it to the Google and translate it, and then write the answer in English and then give it back in Italian to the teacher. Like the guy who used to teach color, he wouldn't speak a single word in English. And the French and me or the South Americans, we would just struggle. But it took us like 4 to 5 months to understand. And by the end of the year, I was able to write, but not that great. But I think I stayed in Italy for 8 years. By that time, I was pretty professional in language, like writing business letter or something also possible.
So 8 years in Italy. Out of that, your first 2 years were your master's course?
1.5 year was master's course, and then 6 months with internship in Fiat.
How did you get into Fiat?
When Giugiaro's son, Fabrizio, he came to our school to review our projects. And being able to talk a little bit Italian and English, and my car project was Alpha 147 redesign.
Okay.
And my design was more inspired by American style, like mix of Chrysler or something like that.
All right.
And he liked that thought process. I was merging two different cultures or something. And he said, I think I can introduce to somebody.
Okay.
Like, okay, good. Means as a newcomer, you are looking for one click to go somewhere.
Yes, yeah.
And he gave me a name, and that was Salvatore Cacciatore.
Okay.
I think he is today designing only video games and something like
All
that.
right.
He used to work in Fiat those days. So I got the email address. I sent my portfolio to these guys. And then I think in 2 or 3 weeks, they called me back and they said, you are one of our interns for this 6 months program or something. And the studio was in Milan.
Okay.
And
But not in Turin.
No.
Okay.
So this studio was called ADUS, Advanced Design Studies or something like that. So I was part of that team, so there they used to put like globally, basically. There were girls from Spain, couple of them were from Chile, I was from India. So it was a mixed culture. We didn't get paid, but we had a lot of fun because we could meet Frank Stephenson, Flavio Manzoni, like these all big names. Those guys were, I think they were in their roles like director, VP roles, and they would come and talk with us and guide us. So that's how I started my career in Fiat.
So what did you first design when you were interning at Fiat? Did you start with, say, a door handle or a chrome garnish?
Well, I was in the interior team.
Okay.
Because they divided two different teams, and I was in the interior team, and I started with Fiat 500's interior projects.
Okay.
Those days it was not even in their drawing boards as such. Let's say like, this will be a project. So I'm talking of 2003, 2004 endish to 5.
So that's like 15 years ago.
Yeah, so they were not yet confirmed. They had a concept, but they were not yet confirmed. So we started under Roberto Giulito.
Okay.
And Roberto used to be our guide, like the course guide kind of. And he took us to different like seat manufacturers. Those all exposures you started, like what is a supplier versus what is OE, what's a secondary tier 1, tier 2. Those all names were starting to come into me. Like, you are getting introduced to these things, and that's what Fiat did to me. And by the end of 6 months or something, because being a gearhead and I was more driven towards motorcycles versus cars, I came in contact with John Salamini.
Okay.
He used to be an ex-Honda designer.
Okay. Based in Italy.
Yeah, based in Italy. And he had just left Honda. He had a small studio in Crema. I went to meet him and I expressed my desire to learn rather than, like, everyone goes there asking for a job. And I said him, I can manage my own something, but teach me something different. Something. And that's, I think, made him think like, yeah, I can help you. And I think he took really care of me as his son.
So for how long were you with John?
With John, I think I spent like 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
That particular summer, Italian summer, the whole summer I spent with John, and he introduced me to Filippo Corticelli, who is right now working with Royal Enfield in UK.
Okay.
And he
At
is
the
a
technical
design-
center.
Yeah. At the technical center, Royal Enfield's technical center in UK, and he works as a design manager. And he literally gave me the let's say the blue stencil, or the, how do you say, call it, like blue brainstorm work, style work. How do you do a sketch? What's the intensity, where it has to be done? What means, how a designer sells his idea to his top management.
Okay.
I think he like literally pushed me in that direction. And then we got my portfolio, which was based off only motorcycles by that time, not cars, and few cars here and there, and it was a nice portfolio. And then he started helping me by giving addresses of different studios where I can send my CV and portfolio. And one of them was Massimo Tamburini, and that's how I got introduced to Massimo Tamburini. Till that time, I didn't even know who he was, what he had done, and like there were so many things which were like out of the box. But then when Filippo spoke about him, I was like, it will be great to go and just meet him also. By luck, one morning when I was working in Fiat, we were just chatting and the phone rang, and on the other side was his assistant, the secretary, and she spoke broken English, and she's like, I'm calling you from San Marino, so and so. I'm like, who? And then she's like, no, Tamburini wants to talk with you. I was like, and then and he spoke in Italian, and he's just like, come here on Thursday. I still remember that much. And that's how I was like, okay. And I called back to John, and I was like, John, they called me. And John called Filippo, and they all started talking and laughing like, oh, this guy is going to crack somewhere, I think. And that the rest is the story. Like I went to meet Tamburini, and he saw my portfolio. I think third page, he flipped it and he said, let's not talk even. Let's go inside. And he took me to the design studio, and he said, this is where my guys work. Do you want to work here? It was like, means God is talking to you, and you are saying no. I said, yeah, sure. And he's like, let's start with a small 6 months internship. I want to see you how you are, and then we will go from there. And
what was Tamburini's team working on in those days?
Those guys were working on new F4.
Okay.
And the Husqvarna, because Husqvarna was under MV's brand those days. So they were working on Husqvarna's, I think it was Nuda, something they called. And they just showed me some sketches. And then it took me 3 months to get into the studio back there. And then from there on, this first project was like hand grips.
Okay.
Hand grips for new Brutale. And it's like, okay, you do like, I think I spent like 2 months, 3 big walls full of hand grips. That's
just
all.
Hand grips.
Yeah, that's how that guy was. Like Massimo Tamburini, I think he had his own vision, and he would just come with a cigarette in his hand, and that flamboyancy was there always. Full Armani suit, like smoking around. No, nothing is there, and he would walk back, and I was questioning like when he will like something, because you are a student and
Yes.
you are just going into job.
Yeah.
It was funny for me, but then now I understand why he did that or what he was looking at. And like, yeah, after 2 months of hand grips, I graduated towards engine covers.
Okay.
And slowly, steadily, I walked into I helped the guys to do the mock-up for Brutale,
Okay.
the new Brutale. All like I worked with these guys for the model makers, and Tamburini would be always wearing his. When he was in good mood, he would wear all the white suit,
Okay.
not to get dirty, and he would be there and guide these guys. And one day he said, "This is done. You have done pretty much good work here. Let's walk into the model shop." And I call him my godfather in that way, because the mentoring was a different style.
So what did you learn from Tamburini?
I think it's, let's say, simplicity. Keep it
Okay.
simple. Make it gorgeous, but same time don't overkill it. But his best words I would remember is, never fall in love with your own design, otherwise you are going to fight for it forever and you will never understand what the customer wants. Do something for the customer, not for yourself. Don't be selfish. And today what you have done, tomorrow it's old. So remember, today it's what fresh sketch is, tomorrow it's history. It's just for reviewing from that time. So put your 100% effort, put your passion into what you are doing for today. So, when you are selling it to the management, or when this goes into production, think of it also negatively. What goes around? Why that hand grip is going to be looked in this way? Or is the rider is going to be comfortable with that? How many spots of grip are required, not required? He used to talk these all technical details, which was, for me, it was a learning process. But then the other guys who used to work with me, they said, you are getting from the top guy and he is talking with you so ccely, it's something different. Even the best example will be the engine cover for Brutale. I think it's still there. Brutale in F4, the 1000cc, or the bigger engine. He literally made me work like, I think, for 20 days, 3 sketches, that's all. Means a sketch is roughly 8 hours and then you're done. He made me work on one sketch, consistently changing small radius changes in here and there. Later on, I realized why he was doing that, because once the sketch is done so neatly, the guy who models it, he doesn't come back to me asking what is supposed to be done here or there. It was already done. Like, the radius was discussed or the surface was discussed in sketch itself. So the guy who is modeling it, he will not come back to you asking, this is not possible, this is possible. So that's what I had learned from this guy, Massimo Tamburini, and it really made me who am I today. Because when I deliver something to my team or somebody who is surfacing, I do my best in giving them the whole concept so that they get the gist of it. And there is no question of debate or discussion. And they go and do it. Yeah, maybe we don't like it. That's part and parcel of their work. That's different. But then at least we go to that level without bringing the senior management. And you present a concept, and then then after some time you start learning it and you start winning it. Once you start winning, you are like, okay, this is good. I'm doing it. And that's what I think Tamburini taught me. Means he infused in me, not even taught. Whatever he spoke, he used to speak in Italian. By the time I stayed with him for 5 years under him, I started picking his accent, which is a slang also. And I used to pick that, and it was interesting and funny also, because he was a very funny guy. People talk about him differently, but for me, he was a funny guy because all the guys who were working under him, we used to laugh. An outsider never knew him because, of course, he was very different to the journalist or the top management, but with us, he was always fun, and it was different. Like, he would be like, hey, go get a coffee. You're working too hard. But he would not say that same to somebody else. He would be very strict. But with designers, he had always that rapport, which was different.
So you worked with Tamburini for 5 years.
Yes.
And you're very proud of the fact that you are a child of Tamburini.
Oh, sure.
So how much of that still continues or all that you learned still continues in all the work that you do right now?
Yeah. I mean, the influence of work ethic is most important. And what I think I I picked up from him was that, like, be honest to yourself, be, like, open to the brand, whichever brand you are working for. You're working for MV, what's that design language is, what's the customer looking for. Be honest to that rather than just doing it because I want to do this. If you're going to do that, then you're going to do your own small custom bike shop or something, and you're not going to be successful in the whole competition or the industry. And you have to be also always like my product has to stand out.
Yeah.
And that's what he infused in me. And I think more or less I would say we were successful in when I did the Street 750 or Street Rod. These two bikes for Harley or the Flat Trackers XG 750. When you see XG 750 on the track, on the flat track race track, it definitely looks different. And it sets a trend, a trademark, a benchmark. And that's what I think he infused in me was that, like, create a benchmark that people should follow you rather than you following them. And means I have heard stories, I don't know how much it is true. Like when he did 916, one of the 916 was in Honda, cut half, and they were imagining or trying to understand how this guy can do these things. So that was inspiration again.
Yes, I also think that the 916 is one of the icons of motorcycle design. So in our office, on our main wall, we've got a Ferrari GTO and a Ducati 916.
Yeah.
Because that is, like, to me, the two ultimate levels of automotive expression in terms of performance and design. While at Tamburini, you did not work on Ducati, right? You only worked on MV at that time?
Yeah.
What all brands did you work on?
No, we were owned by Castiglione Group or Claudio Castiglione and Cajiva Group.
Yeah.
So MV was our only brand, MV and Husqvarna. And Husqvarna was just like, we were doing one dirt bike. It was not that financially stable at those days because MV used to be owned by Petronas, if I'm correct. And I got hired under that group. And then they sold Husqvarna to BMW. And then Tamburini retired by late 2009. And I left CRC, Centro Ricerca Cajiva. I left I think in 2010 first month or something like that.
So from there, from Italy, from Tamburini, under the wings of Tamburini, then where did you go?
So I was looking for new job opportunities, and I was like, I had made a name for myself. People knew there is this Indian kid who can do good work. He comes from the school of Tamburini. He has work ethics. People knew, but it was not that easy to break or like get into anybody's doors. Raffaele Zaccanini, who used to run design studio for Husqvarna, which was owned by BMW that time, he called me up in ECMA and he said, I have an opportunity for you. If you're interested, we would like to talk with you. So I said, okay. So I went to his studio in Varese, outside of Varese. It's in Biondrono. And they offered a small contract. It was more like a consulting company kind of thing. So I was supposed to do my own consulting to those. So it was Chetan Design already in Italy by that time. And I worked on that Husqvarna, Strada, Terra, all conceptualization to clay modeling. I was like, Raffaele really means he trusted me so much that I became a project manager for that whole thing.
Okay.
So we were doing Husqvarna, Strada and Terra. And the engine was donor from 650 from BMW, and chassis was designed in Husqvarna, and then we were doing all the.
And that was the Rotax 650.
Yeah. So we were doing some innovative product or something. But by the time I was about to leave Husqvarna, we were doing a Dakar bike, and that's why I told you I want to go to a Dakar rally is because of that, because that bike never saw the. Never came in public. And then while I'm working with Husqvarna, I got an email from Ray Dre, who used to be the VP of design for Harley-Davidson, because I had already sent my CV to various companies in the world. And Ray sent me an email saying, we would like to meet and talk with you if you are willing to come to Milwaukee. And I was like, wow. Means one iconic brand, one big name, and then you are getting called by some other iconic name, which is from the West Coast. And that's how I ended up, jumping the plane. I went to Milwaukee, and of course, again, the same thing. You show your portfolio, your work. And those days, Willie G was there still, and he was not retired yet. So he came to the interview, and same thing happened again. They were reviewing my portfolio, and till that time I didn't know why I was invited there. What was their project for? Nothing. I'm just talking and talking, and I'm hoping like I'll get a job. That's all. You're still hoping in that same like I want some money, some salary and all.
Financial stability.
Yeah, because you have struggled hard.
Yeah.
You worked under a guy whose name is big, and everything was like different. So when I went and showed my portfolio, I think 15-20 minutes later in the review of the portfolio, Willie G was sitting just beside me. He said, well, I think you need to work with us.
Oh.
So and I was shocked. But then Ray said, well, if the big man has said, let's figure out the contract part of it. And that's how I started my work with Harley-Davidson. And then I was introduced to the project Street 750.
So, for an Indian, how difficult is it for your visas and all of that from here to Italy, then working in Italy, working as a consultant, then going to the US? Is it a headache or is it something that you can manage?
It's a headache, but then if you are passionate enough, if you want to be someone, I think you find the ways. In my case, what has happened is I was able to meet with right people in right time. Like there was a guy whose name is Luca, and he was an advocate, an attorney, and he helped me in all Italian documentations. And when I said him, I need to open my own consulting company, he was like, that's the way you need to go. And because I was working under Tamburini, in those days he had just helped me for my work visa. It was a struggle. I was stuck there. I could not see my parents for 2-3 years. You go through these all hardships. Today, when I look back, I say, yeah, this was worth it. Similarly, when I moved to US, it was same thing. Harley had to sponsor my visas. And again, Harley is not a company who will do these all things right away. Or everyone is concerned, right? So it was again coming down from Willie G. He wanted me, then, so I felt like, okay, privileged in a way, but then you have to also understand, like, you have achieved something or you are somewhat worth it, then only people start.
Of course, yeah.
Like walking behind you or calling you or talking about you. And that's how it is.
So now working with the Italians, doing super bikes, okay, and a few off-road bikes, and then moving to Harley-Davidson, which is the complete other end of the bike design spectrum.
Yeah.
You're talking about, and this was the pre-current era, right?
Yeah.
So this was the old Fat Boys and Arnold Schwarzenegger and I'll Be Back and chrome and big engines and tons of iron. That probably requires a completely different designing mindset, right?
Yeah. I think you're totally 100% right. You have to shift your gears basically. Let's put in that way, because I was doing all forward down leaning lines in MV. Then I go to Husqvarna, it gets like flat lines because it's a dirt bike or a Dakar bike, and then all of a sudden it's a street or
a sofa.
It's like Arnold Schwarzenegger or the Softails, where the philosophy is basically a triangle. And if you see, it's the Zen philosophy of triangle. If you go and read the lines, the chassis to the front fork angle and all that is almost a Zen triangle or something they call it. And it's the peace of mind or something they call it. So it was a big task. But then again, in that also, the whole team was helpful, Harley team. Because they knew I was migrating from a sports bike arena or a dirt bike arena to like the Softails or cruisers, and then it was fun learning around. And in that, I think they trusted me for the slingshot not slingshot, we call it Milwaukee 8.
Okay.
Yeah, so they trusted me to lead the Milwaukee 8 engine program. And that was my biggest learning in the cruiser section or the
So
big
basically, it
V-twin
is the
engine.
styling of the engine, the external, the exterior styling of the engine, because an engine is an integral part of a Harley, right? Unlike sports bikes, where the engine is more or less hidden.
Yeah, I mean, because engine, like, if you see a Harley-Davidson or a cruiser bike, the whole design elements are around the engine. The V-twin is the prime focus.
Yeah.
And it was a big learning for me in that sense, because we used to have critiques where it was very hard for me to understand what Willie G is saying, or Ray Dre is saying, or Frank is guiding me to something. But it was like a big deal, like, a crankcase, air cleaner, or the rocker covers. Like, it was there are so many parts in the engine. You start getting introduced to these all technical terms, and you're worried about the V angle and so many things, which were like, it was a big learning.
And it was probably the first engine that you styled, right?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, I just did an engine cover in MV, and now this is a whole engine. I was running, of course, Frank was the manager, and I was running the program under him with two other designers, but I was the lead. It was just like, it was a roller coaster from almost sports bikes to jumping to this side, and it was fun.
Do you ride a lot?
I do. I enjoy more the cruiser bikes now, but I did ride in Italy the Brutale. It was fun, but then I think I have shifted myself to, like, I'm a heritage guy, like a Softail heritage. I love it, and I'll go around. I have done quite a few long rides in US. And once I took a street from here to Solapur. That's my
from
hometown.
Pune to Solapur. Yeah,
it was fun.
Yeah. So, does riding give you ideas on styling?
Oh yeah. I think I was in Bangalore, and this is pre-street era, Street 750 era. I was in Bangalore, and I was on I think I was in an auto rickshaw, or I was with my friend on a bike, on his bike, and we were going. One guy had customized his Royal Enfield. I just saw him cruising. That imagery remained in me. And then I went back to US, and we were supposed to do these concept bikes for street. And I sketched that guy literally in that sketch, which became Urban Custom later on. So yeah, riding or looking at people who are riding inspires and gives you that idea, like, yeah, this is something which I like it. Like, Harley and the Marlboro Man.
Yes.
It's a movie.
Yes.
It's just ingrained into my, my lifestyle. Like, I'm not saying the rawness, but, there is something which is different in that. It inspires you, and, that's...
So, talking about the Street 750, did that project come to you because you were one of the few Indians over there and the street was designed primarily for India and emerging markets, or you just happened to be at the right time at the right place?
I think they searched for a guy who could, like, apart from design skills, they needed somebody who can talk Indian languages and Italian and can manage this hopping around the world. Because the project was not done just in Milwaukee. It was getting done in Italy, and some part of that was done in Delhi, or in NCR.
Yeah.
So they needed somebody who would, like, go around, get this thing solved, get done, and report back to Milwaukee. So that's how they searched me. They asked my skills of languages. So I entered, honestly, if you want, like, here's the true story is, because of my language skills, I walked into Harley's doors pretty easily versus my competitors, because I was fluent in Italian. I would write an email to the Italian supplier and say, you are wrong or right. And I would get and translate and give it to the US guys saying, this guy is charging us more or something. That's what they were needing, apart from my design skills. And then slow and steadily
So what happened in Italy?
In Italy, at Engines Engineering, we were doing the engineering part of the street. Styling part of the street was done in Milwaukee. Then we had to take the project outside, because those days they had decided that way. Like, the contract was done with Engines Engineering, because they are the experts of small CC
Yes.
engines and stuff. So that's why we went there. And engines engineering was basically developing the whole chassis. So I had to sit in engines engineering and report back if something is going right or wrong. That was day-to-day basis. So my design work was getting done, let's say, from 8 to 2 p.m. And then from 2 to, let's say, 5 or 6, it was all reporting back saying this is done, this is not done, this is done. So there was more of Excel sheet. So all of a sudden you are jumping from just being a designer to a manager with all the financial side of it. Like, you know, you're trying to be everything, but you are just a designer. Right? So,
But it's a fantastic learning experience, right?
yeah.
Because you birthed a whole new platform, a whole new bike.
Yeah. It was fun. I mean, street literally gave me the exposure which I wouldn't have got working under some European brand. And I think it was right time for me to move, and these guys were looking. It was a amalgamation, let's say that way.
And the street rod, which came 2-something years after the Street 750, was that done at the same time? Do you finish all your sketches at the same time and then say, okay, at the start we'll do this, then this is for the facelift, this is for the model change? How does that work?
No, street rods, initial part was done already in the concept bike phase. So you guys saw the RDX 800. It went on to become street rod later on with a new tail and stuff. So to your question, yes, progression was already started, or you know, people already, as a designer, I'll always think of not the one which is coming right now, but the next or the next or something like that. And we are trained to do that. As designers, we are all trained to think of the plan A, the plan B, the plan C, and what's going on next, or who is investing in which side, or what. That is true. But sketching process or like design as such, sometimes it happens like you get like they select one sketch and they say this can be for future, and then when the project is getting kicked off, that can be the base, and then all the other designers chip in with their thoughts on that theme or that base. I mean, you know, whoever is the sketch which correlates to the project, correlates to the voice of customer, what customer is asking, the sketch goes as a winner, and then it gets.
And obviously, being an Indian, you know what Indians would prefer, what emerging market bikers would prefer. So that obviously puts you in pole position, right? To understand what the Street 750 should be all about.
Yeah, I think you're right in that way. But also, like, you know, there was a lot of research done before even I got hired for Street 750 or to Harley Davidson. They had done already, like, I think 3,000 people they interviewed. They asked, what do you want? So the customer is literally telling us what they want. And I'm just taking those words and converting into a sketch and bringing it closer to the market with different ideas.
But does the customer know what he wants? Like, for instance, sitting here right now, do I know what I want 2 years from now or 5 years from now? And you are designing 2 to 5 years in advance, right?
Yeah, well, that's true. Customer literally tells you with keywords. They never tell you, like, I have noticed it in my experience. When you ask somebody, they go on telling what they want, but you have to be smart enough to catch the phrase which he has used, what it is. And that's where the designer skill sets are, like, you know, how you read the psychology of which interview, what's happening. Like, example, when we were at MV and we were working for Husqvarna, the voice of customer was more or less like, I need an enduro bike which can do 2 things, but it also has to go on the street. Those are, I'm telling you these keywords, but the customer doesn't tell you that. He tells you, like, you know.
So you need to be able to analyze what the customer is saying in the clinic, pick out what is relevant, and which might still hold relevance 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Right. So right now, okay, if you're looking at 2 to 5 years, you're obviously looking at an electric bike. Because that's what the whole world is talking about right now. But who knows, 5 years from now, if there are some advancements in gasoline engines, you might still continue with IC engines, right?
Yeah, and see, again, the market is growing in 2 different ways. But if you think of the norms which are coming down, like, I hope I'm correct, by 2025 or 2030, city centers around Europe, like Paris, Milan, and London, You can't take a ICE engine inside the city center. So you have to innovate and bring a EV product for that market. So that's how I think all the major motorcycle manufacturers or auto manufacturers are going towards that, because the guideline is set by the norms, and then you start working towards it through different ideas, and everyone comes with their own interpretation of what it is. So that's like, that part is design part.
So right now, you've got the live wire. Harley-Davidson has the live wire. What do you think will be the future of bike design in the whole EV world?
Well, EV world is vast and wide. Like, it's big as of today, because you see really not so good designed Chinese products. Then there are really cool looking concept bikes, like which I showed you just now from Pierre, to something.
So talk about that. Now talk about Pierre's concept bike. It's I hadn't seen it, to be honest, and it's pretty outlandish. It's unbelievable, right?
Well, I would say Pieter Blanche, he shows to the world what he is, like what he is capable, why he is Pieter Blanche. Like when we say Tamburini, why he is Tamburini. It's the same thing with Pierre. And it's incredible. The product is BST, Fast Track or something they called it, and it was presented in ECMA. When I saw the bike, I was like, what? But that's what I want to see, means that's also EV. And then you get a product made from China or somewhere in Southeast Asia, that's also EV. So how you want to, diversify yourself, each company has to decide their own philosophy, right? Means, I would go to MV or Harley. They have their own way of understanding what the product has to look like. And Pierre is showing to the world how a EV should be done, or it's a total different approach where he has used the engine as a stress element and all the chassis, and those are all 3D aluminum parts.
3D printed parts. So to me, now I don't claim to have any great design sensibility, but for me, if EVs are supposed to be the future, vehicles, should look futuristic. So a regular car with an electric engine is nothing great, right? It's just the same. Your petrol engine is thrown out and your IC, you've got motors and batteries in it. But something like that, which looks so bloody futuristic, that would really rock with me. Because that looks different. So then you're wholeheartedly embracing the future, both in terms of design as well as in terms of technology. And that is something that you would subscribe to.
Yeah, again, it depends. See, you are one of those customers who wants totally outlandish or like way futuristic. The percentage of that versus the percentage of, like the classic, the one who wants his car to look like a car is very different. So like two different parts are there. So we, as a designer, we have to keep in mind two things and then jive and bring to the world something which is like, okay, everyone was astonished when they saw Livewire because it's totally different EV. It's an EV product, but it's totally different. But then that's the key behind it, how research is done behind it. Like, there was a lot of work behind the scene, which shows like, oh wow, Harley can do that. Or you see a product from Pierre now, you say, oh wow. But still, Harley's Livewire is, let's say, more realistic or approachable to today's customer. And the one which Pierre is showing is out of the box for now. But in 5 years, we will accept that also. Who knows? So the designer's job is that, like, you keep, we say, Tamburini used to say, like, your brain has to be really flexible. And you have to work around two different things. Like, you might be working today for today's product and then forget about it when you are asked to do something for, like, really next, something out of the box or like 7 years, 8 years down the line.
So speaking of the present, you've just wrapped up the Bronx. Which was also just shown recently.
Sure.
What was the thinking behind that?
I think the product is going to be in the market pretty soon. And then we can talk about it. Right?
Okay. So you want to keep your secrets close to yourself. Huh?
No, it's not about that. But it will be good, nice to talk once the bike is in market in India here. We can talk about it then.
Was Indian thinking applied into that?
Well, I'm an Indian.
Yeah.
So, but then, you have to think of the globe,
Yeah.
like the global scenario.
Yeah.
What's going around, why we want to do this product, and where this product has to stand in each market. So that's the thought process goes behind it. Not like just India or Indian. So, yeah.
So I want to talk about, now you've talked about Tamburini, Terre Blanche. No, I want to talk about your heroes in terms of bike design. Who are your heroes, your gods?
I think number one will be always Massimo Tamburini. Means he's my godfather. The second will be Villigi, who literally changed me from just a designer from Italy, or a guy who came from Solapur to Italy, and then he was a designer. And Villigi gave the opportunity to what I am today, or so I owe a lot of I owe a lot of respect and success to these two guys, because they nurtured me. These two are my big design heroes, but then there are a lot of them outside of motorcycle world, in car design world is Manzoni from Ferrari, Flavio.
Yeah.
He's a great guy, and I follow him on Instagram. He doesn't put only cars. He shows you a wristwatch. Inspirations come from different part of the world, and that's what I feel like is fascinating. And there are I follow quite a few different designers. There are a lot of them from Russia. They're so good.
Really? Yeah.
And it's incredible. Like, I think, I don't remember the person's name. He's British, but he runs Lada's design studio right now.
Okay.
Steve Martin.
Okay.
Steve Martin. Incredible. He was given the task to change the face of Lada. And he literally changed it. And today Lada is like, oh wow, this is a product from Russia. And that happened with me. I was just sharing with you the story for Tata. And Mr. Bose has changed it. Like, I asked the driver to chase the car, and then I found it's a Tata Harrier. Before that, I was like, oh, maybe it's a European, maybe it's something.
And the same is with the Ultras. Now, if you look at the Ultras, it looks really good.
Yeah, but that's where I feel like it takes courage to change. And those are the heroes. Like, those are the guys who you follow, or you start understanding and finding, and the philosophy, why they did it, what is happening. Means many of them will love to go and do a Audi.
Yeah.
But who will love to go and do a product for Tata, or a product for Lada, or a product for some Chinese brand, and make it totally different? It's hard.
Yes.
And like the product from Neo.
Yeah.
Those guys are doing really incredible.
Yeah. And futuristic looking.
Yeah. And again, they jive with the current market scenario also.
Yeah.
So that's inspiring.
Yeah.
So,
how different is bike design from car design?
well, car has emotion and surfaces. Let's put in that way.
Yeah.
Car has interiors and exteriors, but
Yeah.
exterior is done by a guy who is totally not involved in the interior. Whereas in motorcycle or scooters, or let's say two-wheeler design, the guy who is designing, let's take an example of me. If I'm asked to do a scooter, I have to think of the exterior of the scooter. The interior is the inner surfaces, the seat, the hood, the boot space. As an industrial designer, or as a designer, you have to think more on motorcycle side or the two-wheeler side. And once you put motorcycles or the street fighters, or there are so many genres, right? The designer has to think quite often on different things. Like Harley has our philosophy, so we design our engine first, and then we go around it, and we create a product which is more emotionally, it appeals you to go and buy it, or to make the feeling comes like, oh, I want to own it. That's the job of a designer. So it's totally different. Car has its own pros and cons. Motorcycle has more technical parts, as you know it. Like the swing arm has to be designed. In car, you don't even know where is, apart from the wheels, you don't know what's going underneath.
True. Yeah.
Right? When you open, now I have Alpha, and when you open the bonnet, you see the engine covers and design. But when you and I were growing, you know it. We used to open the engine for 800, there was all like dust collected and all, right? But in motorcycle, it's not there. We cannot cover the engine. We have to use that engine as our aesthetical element. So you have to be more smarter understandable. Like I have seen a lot of kids drawing just cool looking sketches, but they don't understand the technical side of it. Like why the swing arm has to be done in a certain way, or why you want to use a upside down fork or the classic fork, or there are so many things.
Yes.
Why the diameter of the fork has to be changed, what's the headlamp position, why you want a headlamp position in the sports bike. Like Yamaha has its two eyes.
Yes.
Everyone does their own signature.
Yes.
So these all things are way different. Means I told you I started my career with hand grips. It is still part of my life. Even today, I have to think of that also when I'm doing. So, as a designer, I'm not just doing, like, let's say I did a sketch for Bronx and that's done. No. Once you are done with the concept sketch, you have to really think of every other small detail, minute detail. Motorcycle has like risers, tipple clamps, brake, like disc brakes. Each and everything has to be thought. Whereas in car, most of the things are hidden. Maybe in a Ferrari you see a caliper.
Yeah.
It's a red or a yellow, what is. In ours, we have to think of the caliper also. Means people will say, "Arey, ye kya bol raha hai?" No, it is true. You have to think. Otherwise, motorcycle is just like, let's put it that way. Motorcycle is like a pasta sauce made well done. Then only pasta tastes good. Like let's put context of food.
Yeah.
It has to be cooked properly, otherwise nothing synchronizes. And you have seen products which are not synchronizing. Some are coming from the eastern side, Southeast Asian manufacturers. You just see that and you're like, why the hell you did that? But then whereas you see a European product, it's all well done, neatly curated, and you say, yeah, yaar, mere ko ye khadi kharidni hai. That's what a motorcycle or like designer has to do, and it's part of life. Minute details and all stuff. A car designer might not agree with me, but I know interior is all again quite a few surfaces.
Yes.
And he has to deal with surfaces, and I give them credit. It's not easy to do that.
Yeah.
It's a different deal.
You obviously follow what's happening in India. Hero, Bajaj, TVS. What do you think of their design sensibilities?
Well, TVS has been doing these concept bikes where I see they have been, like the design, let's not say sensibility, but their design capabilities have grown. Not in the current product, but the future product, what they are showing always. It has been like, wow, something is interesting, something is coming up. I think Bajaj has developed their own design center here. They have Gian Andrea Fabro as their head. They are developing it really different. Means the Dominar generation, most recent generation is looking damn good. First one, of course, but you and I grew up on Pulsar, which was done in Tokyo R&D, not here those days. But so Bajaj has grown way, and they have invested heavily in design. Hero recently launched
with the X-Pulse.
Yeah, everyone is growing. When I was here in India, it was all common looking, like everything was similar. Or we used to import it from Japan or somewhere, and we used to do that. And I give credit, like even the EV product which Bajaj Chetak, I was really impressed. I was impressed with their product, their skills, craftsmanship, even the factory which they showed on the video. It's like, it makes me feel good that in India you are making this. In gone are those days when we used to say like, "Arey yaar, humko import hi karna hai." Not there anymore. So I'm happy with that. Like everyone has grown, everyone has done.
And Royal Enfield with the Interceptor?
Well, Royal Enfield is targeting the classic rider or that particular customer. So personally, I was looking for more design influence in it, but I think I get it what they're trying to do. They're trying to broaden their customer base around the world, not only India. And the bike looks darn good. Means it's in competition with the Triumphs, Bonneville, and the Barbers and stuff. So yeah, they are doing pretty good, and their work style is really different. And as I told you, Filippo works there, and he did that the Barber concept. It was out of the box again. So everyone does it, but in their own different styles. But as an Indian, I was really impressed with Bajaj and TVS in past 2 or 3 years. And most recently when Royal Enfield showed that project which was done by Filippo, the Barber, it was like really girders, front girders, headlamp, signature lighting. These are very, like, as a designer, you start going in nitpicking everything. And it was incredible. The headlamp, Filippo explained me how he designed the headlamp. It's literally Royal Enfield's logo in it. But people don't even watch, man.
So if you're listening to this podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, also check out the YouTube channel Evo India at Evo India, where we also have this podcast and we've got images of the bikes that Chetan is talking about. So it'll illustrate what he's talking about better. You'll be able to understand what he's talking about, like how the headlamp is modeled around the Royal Enfield logo. So it might give you a little bit more perspective. Chetan, finally to end, what message do you have for budding Indian automotive designers, car designers, bike designers, whatever? How do they go about their future? How easy is it for them to land jobs like yours, for instance? How difficult or easy is it to really set a mark for themselves?
Well, you have to be you have to start thinking of your portfolio. When you create a portfolio, you have to think of your portfolio as something like, I want to put something which is different than the common theme of portfolios which are there, right? I was always thinking of that way. How I would stand out in those 25 in NID, or those 15 who sent portfolio to Tamburini or to Villigi or anybody. That was my strategy. Now everyone has their own strategy, how they want to do it. Of course, don't copy. Get inspired. Because getting inspired by a wristwatch or a sports car is great. I'll never say nothing to that. But just don't copy. Once you start copying, you end up in that copy machine phase. And then you will never have your own idea. Like, Bronx came to me because my manager and me were just joking around. And we were like, he tossed to me a challenge, and then it came. I'm not saying I'm the greatest, but that's where you need somebody to push you. So if you're, whoever is listening and they are in design schools here, and if your professor or your instructor is saying you haven't done a lot of work, don't fall in love again. The philosophy of Tamburini. Don't fall in love with your sketch. I used to come here and do jury for DSK Design School. Kids would fight with me like, oh, this is mine. I would say, no. You are just getting into this and you need to work around and get your portfolio so good that even Rolls-Royce will hire you. And I would inspire them saying, you want to go and work in Rolls-Royce or Bentley? That's the pinnacle for automotive. Or a Mercedes or a Audi. Try to get an internship there. How do you get it? You have to stand out. Because in Europe, you are going to get killed right away, because if you're a commoner, every portfolio is going to look like that, then there are this bunch of portfolios every day in every studio. Even in our studio, we get quite a few CVs and,
Sure, of course.
And when somebody wants to stand out, you have to have at least one project which clicks. Means you will say like, Arey, this guy has something. That has to be there. And it's hard to find always. I agree with that. But then, unless and until we don't put ourselves to that extreme pressure or like push ourselves, you're not going to get it. So I would always say like, try to find your balance of like where you want to. Like, just don't go and do a 2030 motorcycle. Nobody's going to relate you with that. We also want you to see who you are today. What is your thought on Hero, example? And then show me a future product of Hero. I'm just giving you like,
sure.
We just discussed about EV.
Yes.
What's future of EV for you? Show us. What do you think of it? Even a car. Means what will be a car? We don't know. Means we are just right now putting everything in the box and pushing it out. Today's auto manufacturer is doing that. Tesla did it. Everybody's doing it. But what's next? We need to find out that, and that's a challenge. And as a student, you have to think on that. So.
Thank you, Chetan. Thank you for making time out to talk to us on the Thrill of Driving podcast. I know you're on holiday, so I won't take up much more of your time, but it was excellent listening to all your thoughts on bike design. And for a lot of young designers who are listening to and watching this podcast, I'm sure you will be an inspiration. And hopefully we'll have more Chetans coming up through the ranks.
Sure. I'll be happy to see more designers coming and working in different design studios around the world, because At the end, India is a big market, and every company or every auto manufacturer or every motorcycle manufacturer needs couple of Indians to influence the world, because we are the largest
Largest bike market in the world, right?
The largest motorcycle market in the world is India.
Yeah.
And if you are successful in getting into the doors of one or motorcycle manufacturer around the world, or in even in Bajaj, you have gained something, and I would love to see that. So thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, Chetan.
Thank you.
And all the best. Thanks.
Yes, thanks.
Subscribe to the Evo India channel and hit the bell icon to keep pace with the thrill of driving.